So we must push one from.
Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. So what is the Caribbean that we want? Such an interesting theme. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the SIDS4 2024 conference with Nicole Lioto, Executive Director of the Caribbean Natural Resources and
Institute.
There we go, Canary. Good morning, Nicole. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Canary is a mouthful, I know. Thank you.
It is a mouthful. It's a pleasure to have you on the show with us this morning. So let's get into that. What exactly is Canary?
So Canary is a non-profit technical institute working across the whole Caribbean for 35 years now, but we're headquartered in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
And what we do is really sustainable development, focusing on promoting and supporting stewardship of nature to benefit people.
Something that is so important and important when it comes to SIDS, which, as you did mention as we were talking off air as well, we should touch exactly on what SIDS are also.
So SIDS are small island developing states. And the Caribbean, of course, is full of SIDS. There are 39 SIDS globally. So in the Caribbean, in the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, South China Seas, and the Pacific. So 18 of the 39 SIDS are in the Caribbean. So think of all of our islands, but also Guyana, Suriname, Belize, which share many characteristics of islands in that they're low-lying and very vulnerable.
It's interesting that you pointed that out because, of course, many my mind would first go to, but they're not actually islands.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that with us. Nicole, let's go into the theme of this year's conference, the Caribbean We Want. What is that about?
Okay, so the Caribbean We Want is really a document developed by Caribbean civil society to feed into this big Sustainable Development Conference coming up for SIDS, which is coming up at the end of May 27th to 31st in Antigua and Barbuda. So it's a global conference for SIDS sustainable development. And this year the Caribbean is hosting, so we're very proud of that. And the conference really evolved. It happens every 10 years. The first one was in 1994. And every 10 years, SIDS and their development partners, we get together to say what are our sustainable development priorities.
Okay.
So the Caribbean We Want now, this is a process really led by governments. It's an intergovernmental process. And Caribbean civil society felt that we wanted to have a stronger voice in saying what we see as the sustainable development priorities and what role we can play, we do play, we want to play even better. And so the Caribbean We Want is a document developed by Caribbean civil society saying what our priorities are to try and then feed into this bigger intergovernmental conference.
So Nicole, as you mentioned that, perhaps very briefly, what are the priorities that are being focused on?
So Caribbean civil society, there are many, many priorities, of course, but we've distilled four big ones. I mean, we're very, it's frustrating that sustainable development challenges continue. This will be our fourth 10-year sustainable development plan for SIDS. And we're still facing all the challenges of inequities, injustice, climate change, nature being destroyed. So, the four big messages, recommendations Caribbean civil society is coming with. First one is to really recognize and support better the role being played by civil society in contributing to sustainable development. I mean, you have many guests here today who are civil society organizations doing fantastic work, as just an example. And so how can governments and others better recognize, support, partner with civil society for a whole of society approach to sustainable development? The second message really recognizes that economic development is not just about big business. It's about micro, small businesses. It's about what we call local enterprises, green and social enterprises. So they're businesses that have objectives that include protecting the environment and benefiting people. And these businesses need much more support to really drive that transformation to a new kind of economic development that's about people and protecting nature. The third message is about justice. So it's about gender justice, environmental justice, climate justice, social justice of all types, and really integrating that into development, decision-making, and good governance. So for example, I don't know if you we don't have a lot of time today, but Trinidad and Tobago is developing a new constitution.
Right.
And there is a movement in civil society to say we would like to see the right to a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment be one of the human rights enshrined in our constitution. It's there in many countries around the world, but not in Trinidad and Tobago.
So I'm just going to jump in here for a quick moment, because what you said was quite interesting, because one of the things that many will be listening to this conversation and thinking right now is, why does this really matter to civil society?
Exactly.
And what you've just touched on there definitely is a pertinent point. What else can you share with us as to why we need to pay attention to this right now?
So I don't think citizens, residents in the Caribbean should just be oblivious to what these priorities are. I think we need to move beyond voting governments in and then sitting back for several years. We need to be a part of governance and decision making.
Right.
And so we need to be getting to government's attention. What do we see as the priorities? What do we want? And so this voice is very important. And civil society, we're mobilizing. We'll be at the conference. We're having a Caribbean Civil Society Summit before the conference. And then we'll be at the events, talking to people, sharing our ideas and developing partnerships.
Okay, so the conference is from the 27th to the 30th of May, but it's not here.
No,
correct?
It's in Antigua, Antigua and Barbuda.
And so who's going to be participating in this conference? Is it open to the public?
It is, but registration is closed. This was being planned, of course, for the past year.
Right.
So, of course, governments will be there from SIDS. So I know from Trinidad and Tobago, Minister Penny Beckers will lead the delegation, Minister of Planning and Development. So there'll be a government team from all the different SIDS will be there. Other governments who support us, partner governments, the EU and so on. Civil society will be there, and civil society is very diverse. It includes academia, the universities, community organizations, non-profit organizations. It includes the media. It includes professional associations. So we'll be there, and private sector will also be there. There's going to be private sector. So this idea of sustainable development needs to have everybody involved. So it's going to be a real cross-section there in Antigua and Barbuda.
It's excellent to see such widespread representation as well for such a critical conversation to our future. Not just for SIDS, but just the world on a whole massive scale. Tell me something. What would you say is one of the main outcomes that you are looking forward to from this?
I think we would love to see a real shift in mindset, government and other partners, to work more collaboratively with civil society. Civil society is delivering sustainable development on the ground, doing amazing work to protect nature, to help vulnerable people, to drive the type of locally appropriate economic development we want. And we want to see those partnerships coming out of SIDS4, this conference.
Excellent, and we hope to see that as well. Where can we get more information, Nicole?
So there is an official United Nations SIDS4 site. I think if people go online, they'll see it. It's it has all the documents, all the different meetings that will be happening. I think there'll be a couple hundred side events where people will be really sharing information and developing partnerships. Or of course, they can contact Canary. We have a little email set up, sids4@canary.org.
Wonderful. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for joining us this morning. All the best at the conference, and hoping we can have you back on again soon to get some updates and continue the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been our pleasure. Nicole Lioto, Executive Director of Canary, here with us this morning discussing a conference happening on the 27th to the 30th of May. Speaking of the Caribbean, we want SIDS 2024. And we have a lot more to chat on with you, so stay tuned. We'll be back after this break.